C.S. Lewis is one of the most profound and influential Christian writers of all time. He blends theology, philosophy, intellectual conversations in a way that is both deep but also accessible to the common person. And I absolutely love all of his metaphors and analogies that he uses to make his points, because they're very well thought out and very profound. So today I want to share with you my top 5 books by C.S. Lewis plus one honorable mention. All right, so to get started with our honorable mention, we have Mere Christianity. This is the go-to Christian book to explore the essential Christian beliefs across denominations and does an excellent job of breaking down not only what Christians believe, but why we believe it. Since C.S. Lewis was once a famous atheist who eventually turned to God, he had to struggle with and figure out what he believes and why he believes it. And so this book does an excellent job of exploring those concepts and exploring why Christianity makes sense from a historical, moral, and intellectual standpoint. All right, now that we've gotten my honorable mention out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the top 5 list. At number 5, we have one of C.S. Lewis's more philosophical and less discussed works, being The Abolition of Man. This is C.S. Lewis's critique on moral relativism, and he does such a good job of breaking down the issues with and the dangers of subjective morality. The reason this one made the list is that, considering he wrote this book in 1943, its insights on truth and culture and society are incredibly relevant for today, and it is pretty shocking how much insight he gives into our current society and our current struggles. Now, my favorite quote in this book is, "We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst." Oh, so good. All right, coming in at number 4, we have The Four Loves. Now, in this book, C.S. Lewis tackles the meaning of love and looks at the 4 different words that are used in Greek for love. That being the words for friendship, affection, romantic love, and divine love. And what I really appreciate about this book is that he does an excellent job of showing the value in each one of these types and showing how they ultimately point to our relationship with God. And so this book is deeply practical and gives good insight in how our relationships should be impacted by this understanding of love. Now, one of my favorite quotes from this book is actually about friendship as one of the loves, because it is one that is often neglected. The quote being, "Friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which gives value to survival." So good. And such a great reminder of what friendship is and why we need it and why God has given us friendship and given us community, because it is an aspect in our modern culture that is sadly neglected. All right, this next one for number 3 is a cheat because it's actually a series, not one book, but I'm a Christian fiction author and reader, and I love fantasy. And so to not include the Chronicles of Narnia series would be a ridiculous oversight on my part. So this is a Christian fantasy, technically children's series, that C.S. Lewis wrote to explore themes of love and sacrifice and the nature of God himself. And it is one that has inspired and transformed lives and captured so many imaginations. And while The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is obviously the most famous of all the books, Each one offers deep insights and spiritual truth and engaging fantasy stories. Whether you read them as a child or as an adult, you're bound to love them. Now, the quote I picked for this one is from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it says, "Safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you." That is such a profound way of viewing God, because so often we overemphasize God as a friend or God as the judgmental king, and yet he is both. He is not safe, but he is good. All right, next up on the list, we have The Great Divorce. Now, this one is a little more controversial because it seems like he's writing about what heaven and hell will look like. And yet, at the very beginning, he very much lays out this is an allegory. This is not at all meant to be an accurate representation of what heaven or hell looks like. But this is one of the most profound books that I've ever read. Both this and number one on my list were you could read a sentence and then just sit with that sentence and think deeply about it for a month and then come back to read the next sentence and then the next and next. There is so much rich insight within this book that I could read it dozens and dozens of times and I'd still find something new. This book gives powerful insight into how each of our individual choices shape our eternity. Because the main crux of this book is that when you are at the beginning of your journey, you start taking steps and you don't know where those steps are going to lead you. But when you look back at the end of the journey, you recognize that every step you took led you to where you are now. And so what this means is that each of our choices have a profound influence on where we end up. Within the book, all of the characters get this opportunity to see what heaven is like or go back to hell. And all of them ultimately end up choosing to go back to hell because it is not worth sacrificing all of what they hold dear for eternity in heaven. And I think that is such a rich insight into why it is worth making good choices now, why it is worth changing how we live and sacrificing what we see as valuable for what God ultimately sees as better. Because eternity with God is worth it, but it requires a change and a response now. Now, there are countless amazing quotes that I could have picked from this book, but the one I decided to go with is there are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says in the end, "Thy will be done." So good. All right, and for number one on my list of C.S. Lewis books that you absolutely need to check out right now, we have the Screwtape Letters. This is a masterful work written by C.S. Lewis to explore the nature of temptation. And in this work, you have a head demon writing letters back and forth with an apprentice demon. The head demon is trying to teach the apprentice demon how to effectively tempt humanity. The book explores human nature, the nature of spiritual warfare, and how small compromises can lead us astray. This is another one where you could just sit with a sentence or a paragraph and think deeply about it for a month and then come back to read the next sentence. And while I was reading it, I found myself being very convicted and exploring my own motivations and my own actions and trying to figure out in what ways do I need to recognize the nature of sin and temptation in my own life and reject that for what is better. Like Great Divorce, I could have chosen a million quotes from this book. Just about any sentence within this book could have been a quote that I could have chosen. But the one I decided to go with is, "Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. We have no idea the impact that each of our choices can make. And that is why it's so important to be intentional and to let the Holy Spirit guide and convict us. We have to be listening to the Holy Spirit's guidance. And that is why the Holy Spirit has been sent to us, to help us endure and to help us reject sin. All right, so whether you're looking for philosophy, apologetics, fantasy, or just practical insight into how to live as a Christian, C.S. Lewis has a book for you. Now, these are my favorites, but I would love to hear what your favorite C.S. Lewis book is and how you would rank your top 5. Let's discuss in the comments.